Before the world knew his name, before Microsoft became a symbol of innovation, there was just a boy from Seattle who dreamed of changing the world and made a promise that would stay in his heart forever. The story begins long before the billions, long before fame. In a small school library where a shy, curious teenager named Bill Gates spent hours reading about computers that didn't even exist yet. He was different, not the loud, confident kind of student, but the quiet one who saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. Most people didn't understand him, but there was one person who did, a girl named Claire. She was kind, gentle, and full of dreams of her own. While others teased Bill for being obsessed with machines, Claire would sit beside him, watching him write endless lines of code that no one else could understand. One day, she said softly, "You'll build something that will change everything." He smiled, half believing her, half afraid to. That was the beginning of something rare, a friendship built not on popularity or ambition, but belief. They spent afternoons dreaming under the old oak tree behind the library, talking about what they wanted from life. She wanted to be a writer. He wanted to build something that would connect people. And one evening, as the sky burned orange and gold, he made her a promise: "When I make it, when I finally build it, I'll find you again. No matter where life takes us." She laughed and said, "You better keep that promise, Gates." He smiled and said, "I will." But life, as it often does, had other plans. College came, and so did new opportunities. Bill left Seattle for Harvard, his heart heavy but full of hope. He wrote to Claire often at first, long, thoughtful letters about his classes, his projects, his strange new world. But as time passed, the letters grew shorter, the replies fewer. He got lost in his vision, the dream that would one day become Microsoft. Days turned into nights, nights into years. And somewhere between code and ambition, the sound of her laughter faded into memory. Yet, every time he achieved something new, a breakthrough, a partnership, a victory, her words echoed in his mind. "Don't forget to come back." He told himself there would be time later, after success, after stability, after everything was perfect. But success doesn't wait, and neither does life. When Microsoft finally rose from a small startup to a revolution, the world began calling him a genius, a visionary, a billionaire, but inside, he often wondered if Claire ever saw his name in the news, if she ever smiled and whispered, "I knew you would." Years passed before he had a moment to look back. Fame surrounded him, yet he felt strangely alone. The boy who once promised to find her had become the man who couldn't even find himself. One evening, after a long day of meetings, he came across an old box filled with letters, yellowed by time. Among them, he found one from Claire, the last she ever sent. The envelope was fragile, the handwriting familiar. It said, "Bill, if you're happy, all your papers. I always believed in you, but I also hope you found time to believe in something beyond success. Maybe one day, you'll remember the promise under the oak tree." He sat in silence for a long time, staring at those words. Something inside him cracked, not the kind of pain that screams, but the kind that whispers regret. He realized then that while the world celebrated his achievements, the only person who ever saw his soul had quietly faded into the past. Years later, when he stood on stages and spoke about innovation and change, there were moments when he'd pause, small, almost invisible moments, as if remembering something no one else could see. Sometimes, during interviews, when asked what he regretted most, he would smile gently and say, "That's a long story." He never told it, but in his heart, he knew exactly what he meant. One afternoon, decades later, he visited Seattle again, his hometown, his beginning. He walked through the old schoolyard, now quiet and aged. The library was gone, replaced by new buildings. But the oak tree still stood tall, weathered by time. He walked up to it slowly, almost afraid of what he might feel. The wind was cool, the sky painted with the same golden colors of the day he made that promise. He sat beneath it, closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, allowed himself to remember everything: her laughter, her hope, her words. He whispered softly, "Claire, I made it, but I forgot to come back. I'm sorry." A tear rolled down his cheek, and the wind seemed to answer with silence, gentle, forgiving silence. When he left that day, he didn't take anything with him. No photos, no keepsakes, just the memory of a girl who believed in him when he was nobody. From then on, his speeches began to change. He talked less about technology and more about humanity, about love, purpose, and promises we make when we still believe we have all the time in the world. Success, he once said in a quiet interview, is not about what you build, it's about what you keep. The reporter didn't understand, but maybe he wasn't speaking to her. Maybe he was speaking to a memory. As the years passed, people continued to praise his work, his charity, his brilliance. But in the quiet hours when the lights were off and the world was asleep, he would sometimes look out the window and imagine her somewhere, reading one of her stories, smiling softly, proud of him still. And in those moments, he didn't feel like the richest man in the world. He just felt like the boy who once made a promise beneath an oak tree and learned too late that some promises aren't meant to be broken. So when people ask what drives him even now, why he still wakes up every day trying to make the world a little better, they think it's ambition, or habit, or the elation. But maybe, just maybe, it's something else. Maybe it's the echo of a girl's voice from long ago, reminding him that greatness means nothing without heart. Maybe every act of kindness, every life he touches, every school he builds, every vaccine he funds, maybe all of it is his way of keeping that old promise, the one that time couldn't erase. Because the truth is, some stories don't end, they just fade into the rhythm of who we become. And though the world will always remember Bill Gates for changing technology, perhaps the part of him that mattered most was shaped not by success, but by a single promise made under a sunset sky, a promise he could never forget.